the day Earth went silent. The deception begins. Commander Zareth of the Kryn Collective stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Eternal Judgment, watching Earth burn. It had taken 3 days of orbital bombardment to silence the human homeworld. 3 days of relentless fire, of cities turning to ash, of oceans boiling under the heat of plasma weapons. And now, finally, it was over. "Commander, all human transmissions have ceased," reported his tactical officer. "No radio signals, no distress calls, no military communications. Earth is silent." Zareth's 6 eyes gleamed with satisfaction. The Kryn had been planning this attack for 5 years, studying humanity, learning their weaknesses, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when that moment came, they had executed their plan flawlessly. The human military had fought back, of course. They had sent their warships to defend Earth, their fighters to protect their cities, their soldiers to stand against the invasion. But the Kryn had been ready. They had superior numbers, superior technology, superior strategy. The human fleet had been destroyed in the first day. Their orbital defense platforms had fallen in the second. By the third day, there was nothing left but smoke and silence. "Scan for survivors," Zareth ordered. "I want confirmation that the human species is eliminated." The sensor officer worked his console, running deep scans of Earth's surface. Minutes passed. The bridge crew waited in anticipation. "Commander, I'm detecting minimal life signs. Perhaps 10 to 15 million humans remaining, scattered across remote locations. All major population centers have been neutralized. 15 million out of 8 billion. It was acceptable. Those survivors would die slowly over the coming months, unable to rebuild, unable to resist. The human threat was over. "Excellent," Zareth said. "Deploy occupation forces to the remaining population centers. Secure any useful resources and technology. Earth now belongs to the Kryn Collective." Around him, his officers celebrated. They had done what no other species had managed. They had conquered Earth, the homeworld of humanity, the species that had been spreading across the galaxy like a plague for the past 2 centuries. What Zareth didn't know was that everything he had seen was a lie. The truth hidden underground. 3 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains, President Maria Santos stood in a command center that officially didn't exist. Around her, military officers and government officials worked at stations monitoring feeds from across the solar system. "Madam President, the Kryn are landing occupation forces," reported General Marcus Hayes. "They believe Earth is defeated." Santos nodded slowly. "How long do we have?" "Intelligence suggests they'll spend at least 2 weeks cataloging our ruins before they move on to attack our colonies. That gives us 14 days. Is everyone in position?" Hayes pulled up a holographic display showing the solar system. Red dots marked Kryn positions. Blue dots, far more numerous, showed something else entirely. "All ships are in position, Madam President. The Kryn have no idea what's waiting for them." Santos allowed herself a small smile. It was grim, cold, but necessary. "Then let's make sure those 2 weeks are the worst mistake they ever made." The plan had started 5 years ago when human intelligence had discovered Kryn scouts surveying the solar system. Instead of confronting them, humanity had done something unexpected. They had let the scouts watch. They had shown the Kryn exactly what they wanted them to see. Fake military exercises that made human ships look weaker than they were. Staged political arguments that made human government look divided and dysfunctional. False economic reports that suggested humanity was struggling to maintain its colonies. All of it had been theater. All of it designed to make the Kryn believe Earth was vulnerable. And when the Kryn finally attacked, Earth had been ready. Not ready to fight back immediately, that would have ruined everything. Ready to lose convincingly. The orbital defense platforms the Kryn had destroyed were mostly empty shells with enough explosives to look impressive when they blew up. The warships they had eliminated were old vessels scheduled for decommissioning, crewed by skeleton teams who had evacuated before the battle even began. The cities they had bombed were elaborate Hollywood-style sets built specifically to be destroyed. Real cities had been evacuated weeks before the attack, their populations moved to underground shelters that had been under construction for years. Even the death toll was fabricated. Those 15 million survivors the Kryn detected? They were volunteers, people willing to stay on the surface to maintain the illusion. They lived in hidden bunkers, using technology to create fake heat signatures and biosigns that made it look like they were scattered refugees. The real Earth, the real military, the real 8 billion humans, they were all underground or off-world, watching and waiting. The fleet awakens. Commander Zareth toured the ruins of New York City, or what he thought were ruins. The devastation was impressive: collapsed buildings, shattered streets, fires still burning in some areas. His scientists were already cataloging human technology, sorting through the debris for anything useful. These humans built impressive structures, one of his officers commented. Primitive in many ways, but aesthetically pleasing. Zareth nodded. They were an emotional species. They valued beauty over practicality. That's why they were so easy to defeat. As he spoke, something was happening at the edge of the solar system. Something the Kryn sensors couldn't detect because they were looking in the wrong places. The human fleet was waking up. For 5 years, humanity had been building ships in secret. Not near Earth, where Kryn scouts might spot them. Not near any of the colonies that the Kryn knew about. Instead, they had built shipyards in the asteroid belt, inside hollowed-out rocks, hidden from external observation. They had built 300 warships. Not the outdated vessels the Kryn had destroyed. These were next-generation craft, designed specifically to counter Kryn technology. They had studied every Kryn ship that entered the solar system. They had analyzed their shields, their weapons, their tactics. And they had built ships that could kill them. Admiral Catherine Zhang commanded the fleet from her flagship, the Retribution. She was 63 years old, a veteran of 3 colonial wars, and she had spent the last 5 years planning this moment. All ships report ready, Admiral, her first officer reported. We can begin the operation on your command. Zhang looked at the tactical display. The Kryn fleet was spread across Earth's orbit, their ships positioned to dominate the planet they thought they had conquered. They were relaxed, confident, celebrating their victory. They had no idea what was about to happen. Signal all ships, Zhang said calmly. Operation Phoenix is go. Show them what humanity really looks like when we stop pretending to be weak. 300 human warships powered up simultaneously. Their engines, which had been running cold and silent for weeks, roared to life. Their weapons systems activated. Their shields came online. And then they moved. The Kryn detected them immediately. Alarm klaxons screamed across every Kryn vessel. Officers scrambled to their stations. Commander Zareth ran back to his shuttle, racing to reach his command ship. Where did they come from? He shouted into his communicator. How many ships? Unknown, Commander. They appeared all at once from the asteroid belt. We count at least 300 vessels. They're moving toward Earth at high speed. 300 ships. Zareth felt cold fear wash over him. His fleet had 200 ships. They outnumbered him, and worse, these ships were nothing like the ones they had destroyed. These were larger, faster, bristling with weapons. Battle stations, he ordered. All ships form defensive positions around Earth. Prepare to engage. But the human ships didn't attack immediately. Instead, they stopped just outside Kryn weapons range and transmitted a message. Commander Zareth's screen lit up with the face of an elderly human woman in a military uniform. She looked directly at him with eyes that held no mercy. Commander Zareth of the Kryn Collective, Admiral Zhang said, her voice eerily calm. You made a mistake. You thought destroying our cities meant destroying our people. You thought winning one battle meant winning the war. You thought humans would just give up and die. She leaned forward slightly. You were wrong about all of it. Earth isn't dead. Humanity isn't defeated. And now you're going to learn what happens to species that attack our home. The transmission ended. Zareth stared at the blank screen, his 6 eyes wide with growing horror. The realization was hitting him now. The bombing of Earth, the easy victory, the silent planet, it had all been fake. A trap. And he had walked right into it. "Commander, the human fleet is moving," his tactical officer shouted. "They're attacking." 300 human warships surged forward, and the Kryn fleet that had celebrated victory 3 days ago suddenly found itself fighting for survival. The reckoning. A battle like no other. The first human salvo caught the Kryn completely unprepared. They had expected conventional weapons, energy beams, and missiles like the ones the old human fleet had used. Instead, they got something entirely different. The human ships fired weapons that looked like simple projectiles, but when they hit Kryn shields, they didn't explode. They drilled through. Tungsten rods accelerated to a fraction of light speed, carrying such kinetic energy that shields designed to deflect energy weapons were useless against them. The Kryn cruiser Divine Will took 3 hits in rapid succession. The rods punched through its shields, through its armor, through the ship itself, leaving perfect holes that vented atmosphere and killed dozens of crew members in seconds. "Shields aren't stopping them," the tactical officer screamed. "Commander, what do we do?" Zareth stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 2 Kryn ships were already dead, torn apart by weapons that shouldn't have worked. 3 more were damaged, their crews scrambling to seal breaches and restore power. "Return fire. All ships, concentrate fire on their lead vessels." The Kryn fleet responded, pouring energy beams and plasma torpedoes toward the human ships. Some hit, and when they did, human shields flared bright and held. The human vessels were built to take punishment. Admiral Zhang watched the battle from the Retribution's bridge. The first exchange had gone exactly as planned. The Kryn were using standard tactics, concentrating fire on visible targets, trying to establish dominance through superior firepower. "Phase 2, she ordered. "Show them what mobility means." The human fleet split into smaller groups. Unlike the Kryn ships, which were built for sustained firepower from fixed positions, the human vessels were designed for speed and maneuverability. They darted between Kryn positions, firing from unexpected angles, never staying in one place long enough to become easy targets. It was like watching wolves hunt cattle. The Kryn ships were powerful but slow. The human ships were smaller but infinitely more agile. They swarmed around the Kryn formation, attacking weak points, destroying weapons systems, crippling engines. Zareth tried to organize a response, but his fleet was falling apart. Communications broke down as relay ships were destroyed. Formations scattered as captains made their own decisions without orders. The disciplined Kryn military machine was turning into chaos. "All ships, retreat to Rally Point Alpha," Zareth finally ordered. "We need to regroup." But retreat wasn't simple. The human fleet had positioned itself to cut off escape routes. When Kryn ships tried to jump to faster-than-light travel, they found human vessels waiting at their jump points, firing the moment they appeared. It was a massacre. The battle that Zareth thought would be another easy victory turned into a desperate fight for survival. In the first hour, he lost 50 ships. In the second hour, another 30. By the third hour, his fleet was in complete disarray. The price of arrogance. On Earth's surface, the Kryn occupation forces watched the battle in orbit with growing horror. They had come down to claim a conquered world. Now they were trapped on a planet that was very much alive and very angry. Underground shelters opened. Human military forces emerged, not the scattered refugees the Kryn expected, but fully equipped battalions with tanks, artillery, and advanced weapons. The Kryn soldiers had been trained to fight defeated enemies, to pacify populations already broken by orbital bombardment. They had not been trained to fight an organized military force on unfamiliar terrain. The humans hit them hard and fast. Artillery bombardments destroyed Kryn landing zones. Armored divisions overran Kryn positions. Infantry units fought with a ferocity born of 5 years of planning and 3 days of watching their world burn, even if most of that burning had been fake. Colonel Sarah Martinez led the assault on the Kryn base near what used to be Denver. Her battalion had spent 3 days in underground shelters, watching the Kryn celebrate their victory, waiting for this moment. Remember, she told her troops, they thought we were dead. They thought they had won. Let's show them what dead humans look like when they come back. The attack was swift and brutal. The Kryn base was overrun in 20 minutes. Soldiers who had been celebrating their conquest 3 hours ago now found themselves prisoners, disarmed and confused about what had happened. Martinez stood over the Kryn base commander, a tall alien with gray skin and 6 eyes that now showed only fear. "You made a mistake," she said coldly. "You thought destroying fake cities meant destroying us. You thought you were conquerors. You were just targets waiting for us to be ready." The fleet commander's despair. In orbit, Commander Zareth knew he had lost. His fleet of 200 ships was down to less than 80, and those survivors were scattered, damaged, and demoralized. The humans showed no mercy, hunting down every Kryn vessel, destroying them one by one. He received a transmission from Admiral Zhang. Her face appeared on his screen again, still calm, still cold. "Commander Zareth, you have 2 options. Surrender your remaining forces immediately, or be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to decide." Zareth wanted to refuse. Every instinct, every bit of training told him that the Kryn collective did not surrender. They fought to the death. They died with honor. But looking at his tactical display, at the few remaining ships and the thousands of Kryn soldiers trapped on Earth's surface, he realized that honor meant nothing to the dead. He began, his voice breaking. "I surrender. All forces, cease fire and prepare to be boarded." The battle ended. The surviving Kryn ships powered down their weapons and waited. Human Marines boarded them, taking control, arresting crews. On Earth, Kryn occupation forces laid down their arms and surrendered to human military units. The entire invasion force, the proud fleet that had thought it destroyed Earth, was now in custody. The message. 3 weeks later, Commander Zareth stood in a human courtroom. It wasn't a military tribunal, humans were insistent about that. He was being tried as a war criminal, charged with ordering attacks on civilian populations. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species with the capability to receive the signal watched as humanity presented evidence of Kryn war crimes. The fake cities they had bombed were revealed as props, but the intent had been real. The Kryn had tried to exterminate humanity. When it was Zareth's turn to speak, he stood before the human judges and said the only thing he could think of. "We were told you were weak. We were told you were divided. We were told Earth would be easy to conquer." He looked around the courtroom at the faces watching him. "Everything we knew about humanity was a lie." "Not a lie," President Santos said from the gallery. "A test. We wanted to see what you would do if you thought we were helpless. You showed us. You tried to exterminate us." She stood up, her voice carrying across the room. "Let this be a message to every species watching this trial. Humanity does not start wars. But if you bring war to us, if you try to destroy our home, we will show you what it means to fight a species that has been killing each other for 10,000 years and still survived." Zareth was sentenced to life in prison. The remaining Kryn forces were sent home with a warning: never return. Never threaten Earth again. Never underestimate humanity. The Kryn collective received their defeated fleet and the message that came with it. They never attacked human space again. Epilogue: the legend spreads. Years later, Admiral Zhang retired. She had become a legend, the commander who had led humanity's greatest deception, who had turned a species' arrogance against them. In her final speech to the Naval Academy, she told the cadets one thing. "Remember what we did to the Kryn. Not because we're proud of the deception, but because it teaches an important lesson. Humanity's greatest weapon isn't our ships or our weapons or our technology. It's our ability to adapt, to plan, to turn our enemies' expectations against them. She paused, looking out at the young faces. The Kryn thought winning one battle meant winning the war. They thought destroying our visible strength meant destroying us. They didn't understand that humanity's real strength has never been what others can see. It's what we hide, what we prepare, what we're willing to do to protect our home. And across the galaxy, other species watched and learned. Earth had appeared to fall, but Earth had risen again. Humanity had seemed weak, but humanity had been strong all along. The lesson was clear: never assume victory until humanity stops fighting. Because humans don't stop fighting until the war is over, and humans decide when the war is over.